Hello, I'm going to talk about three approaches to educational research, English for academic purposes, writing perspective. Understanding and conducting educational research requires a well-established understanding of its philosophical foundations. Three major paradigms have contributed and shaped the history of educational research: positivist, interpretivist, and critical theories. An insight to these three paradigms in terms of ontology, epistemology, and methodology is the number one must-have item in an educational researcher's toolkit. Accordingly, this study provides an overview of the concepts of ontology, epistemology, and methodology within three major research paradigms and discusses how these concepts can be utilized on the sample of three recent research papers on English for academic purposes writing. So based on this dictionary entry for the concept of research, we can conclude that to understand and conduct educational research, we need to be informed about the systematic methods, principles, and theories about it. At this point, we can talk about paradigms which involve the philosophical stance, conceptual frameworks, research methods, and the theoretical assumptions these are based on. Therefore, we can talk about three issues that a paradigm is concerned with related to a specific discipline: ontology, epistemology, and methodology. Before going on further with these three concepts, it is also important to understand why we have different paradigms. Disciplines change in time, but this does not happen in a gradual or linear process. But the ways of thinking change among the scholars within a discipline, which creates new paradigms, and these do not replace each other, but rather coexisting with the previous ones, maybe changing levels of popularity. So as mentioned before, three constructs form the foundations of a research paradigm, and the first of these is ontology, is the branch of metaphysics that deals with the very basics of being and existence and the nature of reality. Epistemology is a theory of knowledge dealing with the nature of knowing, the source, scope, and validity of knowledge. And the third, methodology, refers to the general strategy or the approach that provides a framework for the application of the research. So the aim of this study is discussing three research articles focusing on academic writing from the field of English for academic purposes, conducted within the scope of three major paradigms in educational research: positivist, interpretivist, and critical theories. On the basis of these three components: ontology, epistemology, and methodology. So with the view that the principles of natural sciences can be applied to social sciences, positivist paradigm has had a significant effect on educational research as well, which means behaviors could be monitored externally based on formed hypotheses through which educational researchers could offer generalizations related to educational processes. Objectivism is the concept underlying the ontological position of positivism. For something to be real, it must be objective, free from any individual factors. As for the epistemological stance, positivism is defined by realism, which asserts that reality exists and is knowable. Therefore, research should explain and measure it through objective means. And finally, empiricism is the approach that defines the methodology of positivism. Therefore, experimental and quasi-experimental methods with pretest, post-test designs on experimental and control groups are employed for positivist research. To see the positivist approach in action, an analysis of the research by Lee is given here. Let's examine the details of the study. So in this study, the authors designed a web-based system on the use of grammatical metaphors to provide students with feedback for both spoken and written English. In order to test the effectiveness of this system, the authors designed an experimental study on graduate and undergraduate students at Hong Kong universities. The procedure consisted of 5 stages, and based on their findings, the authors report that the treatment has a significant effect on teaching writing. Ontologically, we can see the traces of objectivism in the data collection and analysis procedures. Ignoring any individual factors, they conclude that the treatment works, generalizing it to the whole universe based on the numbers obtained from average scores from tests. Epistemologically, we can see that the authors adopt a realist approach as they believe that the efficiency of the treatment can be measured through objective means, tests and scores in this case. Finally, in terms of methodology, as mentioned above, pretest, post-test experimental manipulative designs are commonly employed in studies conducted with a positivist approach. Therefore, on all 3 components of ontology, epistemology, and methodology, we can include the study by Lee in the positivist category. Interpretivism was founded by German sociologist Max Weber, who refused the idea of excluding social factors, making meaning of human behaviors. Ontologically, subjectivism, the antithesis of objectivism, is the doctrine that underpins interpretivist paradigm. Accordingly, there is no objective truth and knowledge is only subjective. Constructionism, originating from Piaget's theory of cognitive development, which is the idea that participants or learners construct knowledge based on their prior experiences, is the epistemological stance of interpretive paradigm. Ethnography, phenomenology, and case study are some of the methodological approaches adopted by interpretivist research. So the study by Wingate and Harper, reviewed below, is an example of interpretivist approach. When we examine the details of this study, we can say that Wingate and Harper investigated the writing processes of 2 university students as they completed their first assignment at university, and they report to have undertaken this task with the concern that writing performance of native novice writers has not been studied before, although there have been many process-oriented studies on the writing processes of non-native speakers of English. So they designed a case study in which they observed the whole computer-based writing processes of 1 successful and 1 unsuccessful student through screen recordings. They report significant differences between 2 students in terms of the time they allocated for processes of writing. Based on their findings, they draw attention to the importance of effective process use in academic writing without drawing any other conclusions or making any generalizations. So, as can be seen from the study here, Wingate and Harper adopts a subjectivist approach ontologically, in which they carry their data collection, analysis, and interpretation procedures on their 2 participants only, without considering their findings applicable to other samples. Epistemologically, the authors follow the constructivist procedures where they value the prior knowledge of their participants and just analyze the existing case without any interventions. Lastly, as reported in their paper as well, the study is a case study, which is one of the methods employed by studies conducted within the framework of interpretivist paradigm. Extra importance is attached to critical theory for educational research, as it is believed to bridge gap between theory and practice, offering a solution to the centuries-old dichotomy in educational research. Although it's not very easy to identify an ontological or epistemological stance to critical theory, since it may vary based on the context. As these three parts of knowledge indicate, critical theory includes both positivist and interpretivist understandings of knowledge, with an extra dimension of bearing the responsibility for action. So to conclude, action research, which primarily aims at solving problems through practical actions as one form of methodology, critical theory adopts. One example of such a study is conducted by Hammond. Uh, as a practitioner herself, Hammond targets at dealing with a problem in her own context, which is related to her first year students' need for support related to specific vocabulary required for academic writing. Therefore, she aims to redesign, implement, evaluate, and develop the targeted phrase bank through iterative cycles. So, to address her research objective, she conducts a four-stage action research and develops a phrase bank for her students, with receiving feedback from them at every stage. In terms of ontology, the author takes the reality from her students' perspective, which is therefore formed by contextual and social factors. Epistemologically, the author tries to reach at knowledge and needed by her students, employing various data collection techniques in order to understand the needs and problems in order to act accordingly. And methodologically, action research is the method employed to search for and find a solution to students' problems. Therefore, we can conclude that the research conducted by Hammond can be an example of critical theory. So finally, with an almost 200-year-old history starting as of mid-80s, educational research has gone through many periods and paradigms war, mostly trying to choose between theory and practice and eventually understanding the value of both. So here in this study, these paradigms, positivist, interpretivist, and critical theories, tries to sample these on three research papers. As an English for academic purpose practitioner, I prefer to choose these three papers from my field of practice, which contributed to my understanding of the implications of these paradigms significantly. As stated above, new paradigms emerge in accordance with the changes in the perspectives of scholars, yet new ones did not replace the existing ones. These three recent papers published in the last 3 years can be considered as a proof of this fact. Additionally, that these three papers belong to the same specific subject matter, English for academic purposes writing, and are from the same journal, which is one of the most prominent publications in the field currently, is an indicator of the versatility of educational research. Therefore, we can conclude that no matter which paradigm or theory is followed, all research is valuable as long as it has sound basis. Thank you very much for listening.